The Tracks of Truth. The old mailbox outside Margaret Thompson's modest home in the small town of Fairview, Ohio, rarely held anything surprising. Bills, grocery flyers, the occasional postcard from a distant cousin. But on a chilly October morning in 2025, among the usual clutter, a plain silver envelope caught her eye. No stamp, no return address, just her name scrawled in sharp black ink. Inside, a folded note read, "They think the dead are forgotten, but the truth won't rest. Help my child. Keep this secret." Tucked beside it was a USB drive, cold and unassuming. Margaret's heart quickened. At 52, she'd seen enough of Fairview's underbelly to know this wasn't a prank. Something wanted to be uncovered, and it had chosen her. Locking the door and drawing the curtains, Margaret plugged the USB into her aging laptop. A folder appeared, labeled only with numbers, 1414. Inside were 14 subfolders, each containing forensic photos, autopsy reports, and audio files. The images were grainy, but the details were chilling: bruises, scratches, and altered timestamps. Every victim was black, their deaths ruled accidents or suicides by the Fairview Police Department. One folder stopped her cold: My Secret. It held files on her college friend, Sarah Jenkins, who died 2 years ago, supposedly by jumping from her apartment balcony. Margaret had never believed it. Sarah had called her the night before, whispering about something big she'd uncovered about Fairview's police. Now, the truth lay in Margaret's hands. She spent hours printing every document, her old printer groaning with each page. She labeled the folder library records to deflect suspicion, then snapped the USB in half, tossing the pieces into separate trash bags. By dawn, she was on a train to the next town, the folder pressed against her chest, headed for a journalist she'd met years ago at a community forum. Rachel Carter, a woman with a fire for justice. Margaret didn't tell her son, Daniel, a 30-year-old FBI agent working a border post. Not because she doubted him, but because she knew the system would swallow this chance if she hesitated. The train was quiet, the gray Ohio sky casting a somber light. A man in a gray coat sat across from her, his eyes lingering on her bag. "Business trip?" he asked, his tone too probing. At Fairview Station, the platform was eerily empty. 2 officers approached: Tom Bradley, tall and menacing, and Carl Weaver, wiry and restless. Without a word, Tom snatched her bag, tore open the folder, and crumpled the pages, tossing them to the ground. "In Fairview, we don't need warrants for strangers who know too much," he said, his voice flat. Margaret stepped back, her heel hitting the track's edge. A train horn sounded in the distance, steady and unrelenting. Tom shoved her, and she fell onto the gravel, her back slamming against the cold rail. The officers didn't shout or rush. They just watched as the train's rumble grew louder, its steel mass emerging through the fog. Margaret's hand clenched her coat pocket, where a backup USB lay hidden. The train was seconds away, its diesel stench filling her lungs. She didn't scream, didn't plead. Her eyes stayed open, fixed on the approaching engine, thinking of Sarah and the 14 names on that list. If she didn't survive, the truth would die with her. Then, a screech of tires shattered the moment. A black SUV skidded onto the platform, its door flying open. Daniel leaped out, his FBI badge glinting as he charged. "Step away from my mother," he roared, slamming Tom against the wall. Carl froze, his eyes darting to the badge. Daniel lifted Margaret from the tracks just as the train roared past, its wind whipping their clothes. At the hospital, Margaret was stable but shaken. Daniel stood in the hallway, his phone buzzing with a call from his regional office. The voice was cold. "You acted without authorization in Fairview. You're suspended for 24 hours, effective immediately." Daniel hung up mid-sentence, his knuckles white. He'd saved his mother, but the system saw only a procedural violation. Looking through the hospital room's glass, he saw Margaret clutching the USB, her face calm but resolute. The fight wasn't over. Margaret refused to sign the hospital's protective isolation form, sensing it was a trap to silence her. She met Rachel Carter in a derelict shipyard, where a mute train operator, James Carter, handed her an old hard drive. His scarred neck and typed message, "They want me to forget the scream that day," confirmed her fears. The hard drive held a video of 2 officers pushing a black teenager, Michael Evans, onto the tracks. The footage cut off, leaving only a bloodstain. Rachel, once a bold reporter driven underground by threats, agreed to publish the data anonymously. For Sarah, she whispered. Back in a safe house, Margaret and Rachel faced new obstacles. A deep-fake video surfaced, showing Rachel confessing to fabricating Fairview stories. Her credibility crumbled, but Margaret urged her to fight back. A young officer, Nathan Reed, was the next to join. Assigned to Fairview's data room, he noticed missing body cam footage from Tom and Carl. Accessing a forbidden backup server, he found unedited clips of police brutality. Copying the files onto a hard drive, he handed it to Margaret in a pre-dawn meeting. Change starts with people like you, she told him. Nathan nodded, knowing he'd crossed a line he couldn't uncross. Margaret's final ally was Laura Bennett, a state prosecutor who'd once fought beside her but had grown silent in her high office. Margaret sent a pointed email. If I die, you'll see your name among those who could have stopped it. Laura didn't reply, but she was listening. The climax came when Margaret was lured to a warehouse, ambushed by Tom and Carl, and tied to a disused track. Tom smirked. No one's coming. Margaret stared back, unafraid. I died when Sarah was pushed. What's left you can't crush. As the train's rumble grew, Nathan appeared, cutting her free just as the engine roared past. I tracked your car, he said, his voice steady. They stood together, the truth intact. Margaret took her evidence to a state hearing, proposing a committee for the nameless to restore erased victims' records. Her 3-minute speech naming Sarah, Michael, and James left the room silent. Will those robbed of their voices ever be heard? She asked, stepping away without waiting for an answer. Daniel uncovered a recording of Sheriff Robert Hayes admitting to inflating black arrests for funding. He sent it to Rachel, who broadcast it on national TV. The clip went viral, sparking investigations and hashtags. Laura stepped forward, filing charges against Hayes for abuse of power and evidence tampering. The Mosswood Support Fund was audited, and the truth began to unravel. At a press conference, Daniel spoke as Margaret's son, not an agent. My mother said, if you must lose everything to keep one truth, that's not loss. That's a choice. He held up her last letter. If you can't find justice, find a way to tell every name. The room was still, his words a call to remember. Months later, a stone statue of a seated woman appeared near Fairview's tracks, funded by anonymous donations. Its blank face bore no name, but everyone knew it was Margaret. A carved inscription read, I stayed so others could keep walking. The tracks became a memorial park, a place where names were spoken again. Margaret's legacy wasn't a monument, but a community awakened to truth. Daniel visited weekly, leaving notes no one read. Rachel published again, her voice restored. Nathan trained new officers, teaching them to question. Laura pushed for reforms, her silence broken. Fairview wasn't perfect, but it was changing one name at a time. Share your thoughts. This story of Margaret, Daniel, and their fight against injustice isn't just about Fairview, it's about the world we live in. Have you ever witnessed violence or unfairness and wondered if you should speak up? Do you believe one person can challenge a broken system? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Take a stand, share your perspective, and let's keep this conversation alive. Your voice matters.